Hi everyone, welcome to Home Screens. This is a podcast about your home screen setups and apps. This week's guest is someone I've been following for years and enjoy their content very much. Someone I've been looking forward to chatting with about their setup. He's the managing editor of Mac Stories, a podcaster on some of my favourites, including Ruminate and App Stories. And also he's a big portable gamer. This time we're talking with John Voorhees. Hi John, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. And again, thanks for coming on. I think the first place we'll start will be looking at the device, and I could probably take a guess given the podcasts I listen to, but do you want to tell us which device these screenshots coming from?
Yes, they're coming from an iPhone 16 Pro Max, which I've had, I guess, now for about 2 weeks. So it's it's kind of fresh. I did reinstall from a backup, but I did clean up my old phone a little bit before I set things up here. So yeah, I've been playing around a little bit more with some of the things we're going to talk about today because I've, new phone, new you type of thing, trying to start over fresh for the fall.
Excellent. And yeah, I'm still on the 15 Pro myself. I normally upgrade every year, but this year I'm trying to be a little bit more frugal. And the bit for me that's the most important is the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I can see, especially using Halide Process Zero, is there's not a huge amount of difference between the two.
Yeah,
unless you want that big zoom, I guess. But
yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I think it's a good year to skip. Really, I mean, Federico just did a story about how he's using the iPhone 16 Plus instead of a Pro model, just because the things that mattered to him weren't really the extra pro camera features as much as it is the vibrant colors and the camera control and the action button, all of which have flowed down to the standard models as well. So yeah, I think it's a good year to kind of skip potentially. I'm not disappointed with the new 16 Pro Max, but I wasn't super excited about it either. I mean, I went from kind of the natural titanium to white, and I like that. I like the white color a lot. I've been using the camera controls some, but for the most part, it doesn't feel a whole lot different than my old phone.
Yeah, and I think going the best, I'd say the best phone, but the one to kind of go for is the 16 with the colors. If you're okay, I couldn't deal without the high refresh rate personally, but it's definitely the nicer. I wouldn't say nicer looking phone, but the 16s look great. Those colors,
definitely.
So let's start with your lock screen. So I'm guessing that the picture is a picture taken on the phone, like a vacation photo, maybe.
Yes, actually, it's a picture from my neighborhood. I live right near a big lake, and so there's a little island out in the middle of the lake, which I have yet to go out to because I'd have to rent a kayak and get out there because there's no other way to get there. And I can walk a few blocks from my house and take in this view. And I kind of liked this one that I took on kind of a cloudy, foggy day of this island that's just kind of nearby where I live. And I use a lot of different lock screens. I use a kind of a combination of, I have some photos that I've taken. I've got some, the gradients that you can put together for using using iOS itself. I've also got some wallpapers that I've either purchased or downloaded off the web somewhere. But this one that I shared for the show, it happens to be one that I use for kind of my daytime focus mode, which isn't really a very complicated focus mode. It just kind of turns off certain notifications while I'm in the middle of working. And I like having this one for my lock screen.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's nice to live in an area where you have kind of nature and wildlife around too. So that's really cool.
Yep.
I can see you've got a heavy focus on weather. In terms of what's it, 1, 2, 3 of your widgets there.
Yeah, well, I've got at the top, I've got the air quality widget, which is Paku, an app called Paku, which. This is something I got in the habit of when I was living in Chicago, where the air wasn't maybe quite as clean as it is here in North Carolina. So I got in the habit of using this, and it comes in handy, less handy here, I suppose, than it does in someplace like Chicago. But on the other hand, I do kind of appreciate having it because it, for instance, when there were some wildfires up in Canada last summer, there was smoke filtering down the East Coast, and some days it really wasn't that nice to go outside or safe for breathing outside as much as it was other days. So yeah, I keep these on there. I actually have the screenshot I sent you. I didn't realize I actually have it on there twice, and I don't know why the numbers are different. Very interesting. I think one of them is the weather app, and the other one is measuring a sensor that's actually at a college not far from my home, which is probably more accurate. I should probably change one of those out.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense why you have those ones, and then obviously you've got your battery, standard battery one.
Yeah, I use the battery one just to kind of keep an eye on my Apple Watch, and more than anything else, I mean that's usually what's on there. And then the weather one there is Mercury weather, which is I like Mercury just because of its simplicity. It's a real nice weather app.
Yeah, it is a good one. It is a good one. I've played with that one too, and the live widget that you have, what's that coming from? I can see obviously you're tracking 2 time zones, but is that the standard Apple one that does that?
No, it's not actually. It's called World Clock, and I can give you a link to it. But because I work with Federico Vitici, who's based in Rome, and one of my sons lives in Dublin, it's just kind of handy to have that there. I mean, I've kind of got a sixth sense of what time it is in Central European time and in Ireland, but it's nice to have a reminder. And then when I'm, just using my phone normally, not on my lock screen, it sits up in the dynamic island, which is kind of a nice thing to have.
Yeah, no, understandable. Track it, needing to track multiple time zones, and then obviously you can see it says that you're in your day focus mode, and then you've replaced you've replaced the torch. I can see you've kept the camera, which is interesting, with the action button and the camera control.
Yes. And this is like one of those things because the phone's still new, I'm still deciding whether I need camera buttons anymore or whether I can just use the physical button. I've left it there just because using the lock screen has been such a habit for the camera that for now I feel I just like the security, I guess, of having it there. But I could definitely see moving that out. When I replaced the flashlight with a quick note control, which that's one of those things that I've really taken to this year with Apple Notes is quick notes. And the thing that's nice about them, because they have background privileges that other apps really don't have, is that you don't have to worry about then going into the app and opening it up to make sure it syncs back to all the other versions you have on other devices. It just all happens seamlessly in the background. So, I have quick notes kind of sprinkled throughout all my various devices so that I can get to them easily, drop in an idea or a thought or a reminder, and then just kind of process them later down the road.
Excellent. Yeah, I've replaced mine too. I've kept the torch on the left, but I've got halide on the right.
Very nice.
Just because, again, you're just using that Process Zero. I've kind of gotten into using that quite a lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I really love the concept of Process Zero because we really have gotten to a place where cameras are very opinionated in the way that they I guess generate the images, because Apple in particular is kind of known for blowing out the shadows in order to bring up the detail in a photo, which sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. And the problem with the iPhone is you didn't really have a choice. Now it's a little better between things like Process Zero on a third-party app like Halide, but also the new photographic styles allow you to kind of dial in a look that's a little bit that's your look more than Apple's that's chosen for you, which I like that too.
Yeah, exactly. So just moving into your home screen then.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a surprise for me, I think, with yourself. I know, listening to yourself for so long, is that you've got shortcuts on the home screen. Two of your most used ones, I would assume.
Yes. One of them it's a URL scheme using an app called HyperDuck that allows me to quit Obsidian on my Mac, because oftentimes I'll leave my desk in my office, I'll go somewhere else in the house, or I'll leave Obsidian running. And Obsidian Sync at times on a bad internet connection will get out of sync, and it will do things like I'll be in another version of Obsidian and typing, and suddenly a word disappears because there's some sort of conflict, and that's not a good thing. And it's very it's very frustrating when that happens. Most of the time, Obsidian Sync is rock solid, but I have had issues with it. So with this, no matter where I am, I just tap a button, and the button and the URL scheme takes effect over iCloud back to my Mac at home and closes Obsidian on my desktop Mac, which is where I usually leave it running by mistake. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. And then the other one is just it uploads images to the Mac Stories CDN. It basically, so what it does is I can pick it. If I tap that, it'll pull up the photo picker. I pick an image, like a screenshot or something, and then it uploads it to the CDN and puts the URL for the image on the clipboard. So that's something that I do kind of a lot. So that's why those two are there.
Makes sense. Yeah, my setup is very simple for my blog. It's all via the Jetpack, so
sure.
I've not really needed to worry about shortcuts. And to be honest, I don't really use a lot of shortcuts, so I probably need to get into a little bit more. It's one of those things I keep saying, right, I need to get into use shortcuts, and then it's just habits. It's just falling into old habits, really.
Yeah. No, we use Jetpack too. We have a WordPress set up for Mac Stories too, but it's very customized, I guess, over the years by WordPress developers. So we use that, but we have our own system for uploading images and hosting them somewhere where it doesn't cost us an arm and a leg if a story gets really popular and the server gets hit a lot of times. So
sure, it makes sense. And then I'll just go from top to bottom. I can see obviously you've got your fitness, your Apple Watch, linked into your Apple Watch, and then I'm not sure what that is. I think I recognise the icon, but I don't know what it is. It feels like a productivity app. I seem to remember, but the one to the right. Yeah,
it's not actually. It is Gentler Streak, which is another.
Oh, Gentler Streak. Okay.
Yeah. So the widget with the shortcuts is just a small square one on the left, and then the grid of 4 icons on the right. There's the fitness app, which I just like because it gives a nice overview of where you stand on various metrics. But Gentler Streak is the app that I use for tracking workouts, and it's those two are up kind of at the top, somewhat out of reach, mainly because I don't use them as much as some of the other apps, but they both together do a good job of giving me an overview of generally where my fitness and health metrics are, as well as workouts using Gentler Streak. So yeah, I keep those there. I've got other apps that I use for that kind of stuff, but I don't need them constantly, so I just leave them, in the app library and search for them when I need them.
Okay, and then obviously App Store and your test flight. It's kind of, I think, as someone in your role, having those two, they would be kind of very. I would guess that they would have been on there if I hadn't have seen your home screen before.
Yeah, I know a lot of people see it and they're like, why would you have those on your home screen? And you know what? I have tried to take them off because but I am in the App Store so much and in Test Flight so much that just because we're reviewing apps all the time that, I have them on there all the time just to kind of keep up with what's going on and manage the various betas that I'm testing and things like that. So that's why they make it to the home screen. I think if I were not a reviewer of apps, I don't think I would have these on my home screen.
Yeah, and there's some interesting kind of first-party choices here with podcasts, music, mail, and calendar.
Yeah, I do have a lot of first-party apps right now, which is, I don't know what that says. I mean, it's not that I don't use third-party apps a lot. It's just that I tuck most of them away and use Apple's for some of the general things that Apple is good at. And with Mail and Calendar, I'm not really a big fan of Apple Mail, but I do most of my email on my Mac using MimeStream. With Apple Mail, I've got it on the home screen because it does everything. I can have my iCloud account in there as well as my various Gmail accounts. And so it's a one-stop shop for email. But I do occasionally also use Spark, because Spark allows us to kind of share email between team members at Mac Stories. So I'm in a bad spot of using 3 email apps at the moment, which I don't really enjoy. And I was hoping that some of the Apple Intelligence stuff with Apple Mail might push me over the edge into Apple Mail. I'm not sure that it's going to. We don't have the categorization stuff in the betas yet, and that's one of the areas that I'm interested in seeing how it goes. But I'm kind of holding out and hoping that MimeStream comes out with their iOS version soon, because I would replace that on this home screen really quickly.
And that one is Spark, isn't it? The one underneath your fitness widget next to shortcuts. That's Spark, that one, isn't it?
That one is actually Copilot.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, Copilot is like a budgeting and expense tracking app. And it's really nicely done, because you can connect it with, bank accounts, investment accounts, credit card accounts, all those kind of things. And then it just kind of, it pulls in all the data immediately, and it's very easy and quick to categorize things and adjust kind of where you want to be in your budget. And then it reports back to you, like, are you closing in on the amount you wanted to spend? Are you over? Are you under? And that sort of thing. So I've been using that to try to be a little bit more mindful about the money that I'm spending. But and so Spark is actually tucked away, and I don't use it as much on my iPhone. The other first party ones, I still use Music, because as much as I like some of the third party music apps like Marvis Pro in particular, I do find that sometimes they choke on my large library. So I end up using the Apple one quite a bit. Apple Podcasts I kind of fell back into it, mainly because the way I've listened to podcasts has changed a lot over the years. I used to have a long commute, and so I would listen to a lot more shows than I really can get around to now. Now I just, I live and work at home, and I listen to shows when I'm out exercising or when I'm maybe in the car running errands and things like that, or even just doing chores around the house. But it is less time, and so I've settled on a more simple system that lets me, what I do is I follow a bunch of shows. I go into the library in Apple Podcasts, and I go to the latest section, which shows all the recently released episodes. And then I just pick and choose, and I move them into the saved list. And then I've got a nice list of things to listen to when I get time. And if I miss something, I miss something. And if there's something that I don't get to, I just delete it. I used to be kind of a completionist with a lot of shows, and and that's not so much the case anymore. It's more, there are a few that I listen to everything, but most I kind of pick and choose these days. And I don't know about Calendar. There's not much to say about Calendar other than I have to keep an eye on the things I have scheduled, which I'm not very good at doing because I don't have tons of meetings and things like that. But I've got shared calendars in there for things at Mac Stories. I've got a personal calendar, a bunch of different things, and that's kind of where I go for it, because I found that I used to use Fantastical, and I found that I didn't really need all of its pro features, and that app has gotten kind of expensive if you're not using most of the features. There are things in there that I wish Calendar had, but given the limited number of them that I was using, it just kind of wasn't a good choice for me anymore.
Yeah, I'm using Fantastical mainly for the widget, the kind of the medium-sized widget that shows your schedule on the right and a month view on the left of the widget. But
it's very nice widget.
I don't. It is, yeah, but I don't pay. I think it's because maybe I had a legacy account or something, so I don't have the full features of the Pro because like you said, I don't need them, but I do. I only really use it for the widget. I don't actually go into the app very much. I just really like that kind of way of being able to see where I am in the month is quite important.
Yeah, no, that's, and the design has always been excellent with that app. I've always really enjoyed it. It's just like calendars and schedules just aren't a big part of my life, so I've gone with the default there.
And I see you've got another camera, a way to access your camera. and next to photos. Yeah.
Yep. So camera and photos I used to keep up in the upper right, kind of out where the fitness and general streak apps are. And I decided I wanted to elevate those a little bit. I mean, photos, because not only do I like looking at my photos, but I take a lot of screenshots for all the reviews we do, and it just is easier for me to reach if I'm on my phone doing that. And the camera, I kind of, when I used to live in Chicago, I used to spend a lot of time taking photos around the city. I got out of that habit a little bit when we moved, and I'm trying to get back into it. And so I just like putting it where it's nearby.
Yeah, it's like a reminder, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Do it. Interesting. Moving down to the bottom row of icons, the one, the black icon, is that like a reminders bolt-on? Is it one of the third-party reminders apps?
That is Lear, actually, which is an RSS client.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, so I've used Reader for many years, and I decided to give Lear another try, in part because of the update to Reader that just came out. I think it's a really interesting app, the direction that it's going, but it doesn't really work super well with the way that I read RSS. I just plow through RSS very, very quickly, like hundreds of headlines looking for things to write about, basically. Or if it's just, something that interests me to read for personal reasons, I save it. I save it to a read later app and then go to that later. But having kind of a social network feed style stream of a bunch of different things, because the new Reader incorporates Mastodon and RSS and podcasts and YouTube and Reddit, a bunch of different things. That's just too much in one place for me. So, and while classic Reader is still being developed, I thought it would be a good time just to kind of check out something different. And Lear is nice because it integrates with the Read Later app that I'm using right now, which is Readwise Reader.
Okay, that makes sense. And is that Ice Cubes, that next one?
The next one is a beta app that isn't available publicly yet. It's made by my son Finn, and it's called right now. Its working name, which I'm not a big fan of, is called Link Dump, and it works a little bit. It works a little bit like Good Links in that it's designed to very quickly capture URLs and save them for later. And it's still very much an alpha, but I've been helping him test it out, because one of the things I find is that it's not just RSS where I find links. I find links all over the place. Maybe it's in Mastodon, or maybe it's in Threads, or just surfing the web, or whatever it happens to be. I find them everywhere. Someone sends them to me. Now I have a place where I can just drop them all, whether there's something that's an article that would make sense in a Read Later app, or if it's just a website that would look, which a parser in a Read Later app would destroy. So that's what I've been using it for, kind of as a bookmarking thing for now. Okay,
that sounds cool. And you've got Apple Notes, which a lot of us Apple users heavily use it. I use it for all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get more into it. I think that Apple Notes has finally reached a tipping point where I will use it more. I've always been partial to plain text, and I mean, one of the funny things about this home screen is a lot of the apps that I use the very most aren't on here at all, like Obsidian, because I just don't do that stuff on my phone very much. But Notes, I find, is a very good app for the kind of quick jotting down of information that you just want to have a record of, whether it's for reference or just for later or whatever it is. So I like having that on the home screen too. I guess my home screen use has changed a lot over the years. When I used to have a long commute and I worked in a day job while I was also doing some Mac Stories work, I used to do a lot of work on my phone. I used to write whole articles on my phone while I was sitting in a train. And that has definitely changed, which is in part why my home screen and my iPhone is less work related now than it used to be. And it's probably a little more, it's kind of a combination of research and personal stuff, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense. And the last one there is a folder with, to me, it looks more of a I don't want to call social network chilling out because it's not these days, is it? But I can see that's more of your non-productivity kind of downtimey type apps. With the one in the middle, I can see straight away is the YouTube app. It's not YouTube, but it's the one I always forget the name of, which links into YouTube.
Yeah, it's Play, which lets you save the URLs to YouTube and a bunch of other services. It's kind of like a read later app, but for YouTube. And I probably watch less YouTube on my phone than I do my iPad, but I like to have it there. It's like the top row here is kind of miscellaneous. There's Teachy Tabs, which is a Jonathan Rees's app that lets you just kind of save bookmarks to a handful of websites and read them in that app. And I've been testing that out because I think it's kind of a neat concept that for reading certain sites. Then I have settings, because as much as I've tried to move that out off the home screen, I feel like I always need it at some point. And Readwise Reader, which is my read later app, and I do a fair amount of reading on my phone, whether it's in that app or RSS or whatever. Then I've got an app called Miko, which I've been testing, and I'm not sure it's going to stick. It's a newsletter reader. It's you just feed your email newsletters into it, and it does a very nice job of formatting them and giving you a way to read them in a dedicated app. Which, you can obviously do that with other things. You can do that with some RSS clients. You can do that with Readwise Reader. There's a bunch of ways to handle newsletters, but I thought having a dedicated app might be an interesting way to test out, what that experience is like.
Yeah.
Then I have Winston, which is a perpetual beta Reddit client that is out there that you basically need to get a developer token for Reddit, and then you put it in, and then all of a sudden you've got a replacement for Apollo, RIP, which Winston's pretty good. It can be buggy at times, but I'm not a big fan of the official Reddit app. So
no, not me.
Yeah, this one is better, and I've been using it on my phone. Then I just have my three main social network apps. I've got Ivory for Mastodon, Instagram, and Threads. And I put these in a folder mainly to keep myself from tapping on them all the time. They're there, they're close by, I can get to them, but I also don't really want them like in my face all day long. So that's why I put them in a folder.
No, definitely. Okay, so if we move into your dock, it's interesting. I can see, obviously, messages is, kind of the obvious one, and I can see Safari again. I've tried other apps like Arc, and but I always come back to Safari because it works so well with everything else that I have.
Exactly. That's the same reason I use it. I mean, it's just so well integrated into the system, which I'm sure is part of what the EU doesn't like. but it'd be nice if those other browsers could do the same. But for now, Safari really is the best choice for that.
Yeah, and obviously Discord, and I think that's probably the main place I go, to be honest, these days is Discord. I think out of anything I've got socially.
Yeah, I use Discord there because I put it in the dock because one, we have a Discord for our Club Mac Stories members, so I'm in there quite a bit. But also, we run Mac Stories from Discord now too. We used to use Slack back in the day, and we've used other things before that. But Discord is really all we need to coordinate the site between me, Federico, and all the writers and so forth. So yeah, Discord's where that all kind of happens.
And then go on, sorry.
I was going to say, Reminders is very new. I just like switching task managers all the time. So I've been on Things for about 9 months, and and I love Things, but I wanted to kind of get a feel for the new features in Reminders that came with the OS updates this fall. So I switched back, and I'm trying to see if that might be a better solution for me. I'm not sure it is, but I do like some of the things that have been added, especially the fact that it used to be very odd. It used to be if you set up a task and had subtasks under it, that those subtasks would not appear in the today view or the scheduled view, which are kind of like, built-in smart lists. So now they changed that so that they will show up there, and they will, and you will see that they're part of a structure with a parent task. And that's made a big difference for me, because one way I break up the long lists that you can get in reminders is that I'll have one that's like a task that says produce app stories. And then there'll be like 6 or 7 things under that, which are all the steps I have to do, from recording, from coming up with ideas to recording to editing and all that stuff. And they're all due on different days, but they're all under a parent task, so that I can collapse it and not end up creating an incredibly long list.
Makes sense. Yeah. I'm like you. I go between productivity apps probably every few months. And what I find with reminders was it doesn't work very well when you have display zoom mode. So I have display zoom mode on my phone a lot of the time, just because my eyes are not what they used to be, and the widget gets really buggy. It'll either display absolutely nothing, as in it'll just have lots of little square blocks instead of any text. But I also found that it was displaying the wrong amount of items that were due today. So I might have maybe 3 things due today, and I could see 3 things in the list, but the count would say 0 in the widget.
Oh.
As soon as I turned display zoom off, it went back to what it should be. It's really strange. I find all these little UI glitches in the interface if you run in display zoom. I write about it every now and again, and I always raise bugs in the beta season, but nothing ever gets. I never get any feedback on any of them.
Yeah, no, I know how that feels.
Yeah. This is going to be interesting now, going through Control Center, because I've only just started customizing mine with the new interface, because in iOS 18, obviously, we can configure them, but I find it quite fiddly, and sometimes I'll move, especially the medium or large size widgets, you move them around and everything else either moves nicely around it or completely goes onto the second page.
Yeah.
So I've tended to just stick to, I've moved it once and I don't want to move it anymore because it's kind of fixed.
Yeah, there's some weird bugs too, which you can see in this first screenshot I sent you, which is there's a missing widget in there.
There's a gap, and I've just noticed it. Yeah.
There is actually a widget there that I didn't realize when I took the screenshot had disappeared, because I was having trouble with this, where they weren't going on to the other screen, they were just disappearing periodically. There's a timer widget there in the blank space. So just to give you an idea, like going through this kind of quickly, what this stuff does is I like to have the now playing small widget up in the corner, so I can just easily control podcasts or music or whatever I'm listening to. I get to Control Center by using what's going to be something that's going to be in 18.1. There's a new shortcuts action that will either turn on, turn off, or toggle the Control Center. So I can tie that to the action button, and I can pull down the Control Center simply by pressing the action button, which is really nice because I really don't like reaching up to the top corner. So now Plane's there. The weather one next to it is Carrot Weather. That is the only weather app that I use that I've seen that has a Control Center widget, and I thought that would be a nice way to get to the weather quickly. I kind of dropped the wallet one here near the top because I had extra space, so why not for when I'm paying for something. And then I have the blank space, which is supposed to be the timer, and the alarm clock one for setting those things. Because I'm using the action button to trigger Control Center, I tried to put the things that I use most along the left edge, because I'm pressing down the action button on the left side with my left thumb. And so I have the remote control for our Apple TV for when I'm so I can, if I don't have the remote control nearby, I can do that quickly. I have then a series of these buttons are for Remind Me Faster, which is a utility app for adding things easily to the Reminders app. And so it has a Control Center widget that lets you assign different lists to the buttons, including their own icons. So the icon of the house, that's my home list. The one below it with the inbox goes into my Reminders inbox. The one below that with the book goes into my Mac Stories list. The one with the plus symbol next to it goes into my club list. And the one next to that that has the speech bubbles goes into my podcast lists, because those are like the 5 lists that I use the most, that kind of ring around these larger widgets, which are just, kind of the common brightness, volume, and then focus mode controls. On the right-hand side of the brightness and volume controls, there are a couple of different controls. There's one for doing screen recordings, which, again, not something I use a ton, but I like to have it there. And then the light and dark mode one, because I typically run my phone in dark mode, but sometimes screenshots don't look great in dark mode. So what I do is I switch it to light mode for taking screenshots quite often. So that's why I've got that control there. Then I've got the ringer silence or turn on toggle below that, which, my phone is in silent mode probably like 95% of the time. But it every now and then it makes sense to have it turned on for like games or something like that. And beneath that, I've got the tethering, the personal hotspot.
Hotspot. Yeah, I've got that too.
Right, because I have an iPad that I used to use. I used to have iPads with cellular, and I don't use it enough for it to really to justify the cost of it. So now I've just got a regular Wi-Fi one. I've been using my phone to tether because I've got a fair amount of data on my phone with my plan. So whether I'll either tether my iPad or my Mac using that when I'm away from home. And then, I guess one of the things that is a theme of like the lower half of this control center page is quick capture, because I already ran through all the remind me faster buttons, which are for capturing tasks. But then in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a set of 4 controls that are quick note, which we saw on the lock screen because it's just for jotting a quick note. The voice memos app control, which mostly is here because I think I should try using it more and seeing if that's a good way to capture stuff instead of typing it out while I'm not looking where I'm going. So I'm going to try to use that more, though I'm not historically used it much. And then a camera and halide, both on this control center page, because I want to use halide a little bit more. It's a great app. I do find that it's very fast. We'll be able to tie this to the camera control, and switch cameras that way. So I want to try to get into the habit of using some of these third-party apps like Halide and Obscura a little bit more than I have in the past. And then the last 4, I've got the flashlight. This is where it finally shows up. I don't use the flashlight a lot, which is why I took it off the lock screen and put it here. I can still get to it pretty easily, but I don't use it very much. One thing I've thought of doing, which I haven't done yet, is setting up a focus mode that's like an evening focus mode. Like once the sun goes down, bring the flashlight back to the lock screen might be a good idea. But I haven't really spent a lot of time on focus modes lately. After I basically tore up all my focus modes and started from scratch. And then I've got the little home icon is for the home app, because this is to kind of cover anything that's not in the next control center page that we're going to talk about. And then Wi-Fi and the low power mode, which is always good to have if you're out a lot in the day and you need to conserve battery.
Yeah, I've put low power mode in mine as well, and it's one of those things I put in thinking I'm going to use it a lot, and I always forget it's there. You've also reminded me as well to put voice memos there, because I play guitar, and it's one of those apps that is really good for capturing quick ideas. Yep. And I hadn't thought to put it into my control center, so I'll be doing that later.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know a lot of musicians use it, and I feel like it's, especially now with the transcription, I feel like it's something I should use more, because it'll be simpler for me to take that information out as text and put it somewhere else if I want to.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so, as you just mentioned, the second page. I've only got one. I've only got my favourites on my one, but and again, part of that is because my house doesn't have anything smart in it. Really, obviously, apart from us, the humans,
right?
We don't have anything. Our light switches are we just go up and flick the switch, So
Yep.
I can see you've got a lot of smart things going on here.
I do, and in my house, most of this stuff is in my office, where it doesn't have to impact the rest of my family. So, so it's basically all the lighting in here plus a bunch of electrical outlets more than anything else. And so that's what I use. That's mostly what's on this page. There are two things here. There are two in the kitchen, which are a couple of overhead lights in the kitchen, which come on automatically based on a motion sensor near my bedroom, so that when I get up in the morning, it senses that I'm up and it turns on the kitchen lights for me without me having to do that when I go downstairs to the kitchen. So these just let me toggle those on and off manually if I want to. And then the two scenes at the top, there's Workday, which is just kind of my normal lighting in my office, and another one called White Light. And White Light is for when I have to do a video call and I want to have a particular color temperature of the light that matches what I'm recording for YouTube or whatever it happens to be. So that's more like production lighting, I guess. And then the other lights are just lights that I have in the office, and it makes it easy to turn them on and off. And then I have just a lot of power things. I like to power things off when I'm not using them because they can generate heat a lot of times, with the wall warts. And I live in a hot climate, and everything I can do to kind of lower the temperature inside my house is kind of a win. So some of these plugs go to different chargers that I use periodically for charging things through the day. Others tie into lights on my desk. And then there's one for I have a printer, which I don't use very often, but it's a laser printer, which generates a ton of heat when it turns up and warms up. So I just turn it on and off when I need it. And that's why that's in Control Center too. So I can this morning I used it to print a couple of pages, and then I immediately shut it off afterwards.
So I was going to ask you a question, actually, based on your knowledge of all this stuff. Now I think about it, and I'm thinking about uses. I work from home. I'm on the desk I'm on now with the setup, and it's a bit... Every time I go into the desk to turn all the power stuff off in an evening, I almost bash my head getting back up again. And then now I'm seeing... I didn't even think about having one in kind of a wall socket.
Yeah, there's...
Which brand would you recommend?
So there is... I've got a couple of things going on here. There's a power strip by a company called Miros, which I think in the U.S. Amazon store is maybe $35 or $40, something like that. And it has, I believe it's 4 plugs plus some USB-A outlets on it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and each of them can be controlled independently. So where you see office charger or office power bank, those are on the same device, but they're separate outlets on the same device. So I can trigger them individually without having to turn the whole thing on or off. The USB ports are just one unit. There's 3 or 4 of them, and they're all either on or off, but I don't have a lot plugged into that. I've got a light that sits above my monitor that plugs into those that I can turn off. I have another an Apple Watch charger that plugs into that as well. So I can shut that off, and then I'm not charging those things. So that's kind of what I do there. There's another one that's made by, I think Eve makes one of these too, but it's much more expensive. It's more like $100, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. It's something maybe I'll add my first kind of smart device in the house for this, because that would be... It feels lazy, but it is such an awkward position. I got so many cables under the desk, and like I said, a number of times I've almost bashed my head. I might just go for the first one, maybe if I can get it for sort of 30, 40, and have a play around. Yeah,
it's definitely that Miros makes a lot of pretty good stuff that's HomeKit compatible, and it tends to be more affordable. I think Miros and Aqara are 2 brands that are, I believe, out of China, and they both make devices that are a lot less expensive than some of the stuff I've seen before. Because you can spend a lot of money on smart home stuff if you're not careful.
Definitely. But thanks, John. Thanks for going through your two control center pages.
Sure.
And thanks for going through your home screen and lock screen and spending some time today to go through that. I do appreciate all the time. I know everybody's really, really busy. So I do appreciate everybody that comes on. You know, this podcast is like a little niche that's scratching an itch, and what I'm finding is that a lot of people. I kind of knew this already, you know. Part of going into this was there are a lot of people really into setups and home screens.
They really are,
apps, and you should know that. Obviously, coming from Mac Stories as well. So.
Yeah. I mean,
it's been really good.
Yeah, we write about them on Club Mac Stories periodically because people are always interested to see how other people have set up their systems on their various devices. So yeah, I think it's a great idea for a show. Yeah,
thank you, and thanks again for coming on, and thanks everybody for listening. I appreciate all the nice comments that I've been getting on. Mastodon mainly because it's really the only one that I'm using. If you'd like to contact me, if you just give me a shout on my blog, which is ljpuk.net. And John, where's the best place for people to follow your work?
They can go over to macstories.net. There you'll find not just my writing, but all the podcasts that we do on Mac Stories, that some of which I'm on, some of which I'm not. So it's all over there on macstories.net.
Thanks. And I am enjoying all of your podcasts actually, and you know, Ruminate, like I mentioned at the beginning, is one that I do listen to when the new one's out. And Comfort Zone, I think, really get as a starter, it's becoming is in my rotation, you know, to listen to again as soon as they come out.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Yeah, Ruminate. I've been doing Ruminate with Rob longer than any other podcast that I've done, so that's a special one for me.
Excellent. But thanks again, and thanks everybody for listening, and I'll speak to you in the next episode.